Another deadly day for local police, this time in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where 3 officers were shot dead Sunday morning. 3 others were wounded. One suspect, we're told, is dead, and there is an active manhunt for possibly 2 others. I'm Shannon Bream, live from Cleveland, where the Republican National Convention is set to take place. But for now, let's get right to Will Carr. He is on the scene in Baton Rouge. Will?
Hey there, Shannon. Well, there's really been an ebb and flow of both calm and chaos within the past 30 minutes here. You can see we're about half a mile down from where this shooting took place. In about the past 10-15 minutes, we've seen several SWAT teams racing towards the area. We've also seen canine officers. Now, the Sheriff's Department has confirmed to us that this is still an active scene, but they also emphasize that this is contained. And now the local affiliates here, the local television affiliates, are reporting that there's actually an armed standoff going on between one of these gunmen and officers on the scene. They told us about 15-20 minutes ago that there were still potentially 2 gunmen on the loose, so unclear where the second might be, but they have established a perimeter here, a very broad perimeter. There's helicopters flying, trying to get a sense of exactly what is playing out here. Like I mentioned, quite a fluid situation at this point. And to set this up for you, Shannon, you have to go back to July 5th. That's when Alton Sterling was shot and killed here in Baton Rouge. In the wake of that, there were protests all throughout this city. Last weekend, hundreds of protesters flooded the streets here in Baton Rouge. Nearly 200 ended up getting arrested. And at the time, law enforcement throughout this area was criticized for the way that they handled that. They were told that they were overly aggressive. The ACLU filed a lawsuit in the middle of this week saying that some of the protesters' First Amendment rights had been violated. And at the same time, during the week, we learned that last weekend, 4 suspects broke into a pawn shop very close to where we are right now. They stole 8 handguns, and when the first was arrested as he was fleeing the scene, he told officers that it was their intent to shoot and kill members of law enforcement across this region. So the past couple of days have been very calm here. Alton Sterling had his funeral on Friday. His son, Cameron, is 15 years old, came out with a plea for the public to stay very calm. He asked for everybody to not be violent if there were any demonstrations. So it's been a stark contrast to what we saw last weekend here. But obviously, as I mentioned, law enforcement has known that there's a threat, especially after Dallas and the tragic loss of the police officers that we saw in Texas. Law enforcement has known that there was the potential for a situation to play out like this. And Shannon, the last thing that I'll leave you with is I was talking to a mother yesterday, and she has a 15-year-old son here, the same age as Alton Sterling's son, and she mentioned to me that she's very concerned about exactly how Baton Rouge is going to look for her son as he continues to grow up after all the tensions that we've seen. And now you can only help but wonder exactly what this city's bracing for in the coming days and weeks. Shannon.
And Will, you've been there for quite a while covering this, and I want to pick up on something that you mentioned, that there had been protests a week or so ago, that there was more tension there, that there was definitely a feeling that there potentially were things that could morph into something bigger. But it seems like this weekend things were calmer there, at least until the shooting today. Is that an accurate gauge of how things have been playing out?
Yeah, that's entirely accurate. Last weekend, businesses across downtown Baton Rouge were closed because there was the concern that violence could potentially break out. They were very concerned that you could have a potential Ferguson or a Baltimore scenario. Last night, we went and had dinner in downtown Baton Rouge. All the businesses were open. We spoke to a couple of the employees there, and they said it seemed like the city was getting back to normal here. And then you obviously had this tragic turn of events.
It looks like we are losing Will's signal there. We will, of course, check back in with him as soon as we have more from the scene there. Just to put this in perspective, by the way, check this out. The average salary for a Baton Rouge police officer, just about $49,000 a year. And contrast that with the price that they may have to pay on any given day. It's really immeasurable. Rod Wheeler, a former Washington, D.C. homicide detective, joins us now with his insights on these developments. He's been in those shoes, and I know that you worked here in Cleveland as well.
That's right.
Rod, walk me through where we are now, because we are told officially there's 1 suspect dead, potentially 2 others, and potentially a standoff now. How does this work for police? How important is it for them to make sure that they, if these are indeed suspects connected to this case, that they are able to bring them in and able to get information from them.
Right. It's going to be very important if they can bring these individuals in alive. Why? Because they contain so much intelligence, Shannon, that will aid and abet us in trying to figure out what exactly caused this. Where did they get the weapons? Was this a planned event? And the most important thing, Shannon, is whether or not there's other types of events like this, attacks, if you will, against the police officers being planned. Now, I just got information from some of my reliable sources, which really echoes what Will just said. There is a standoff in place, a barricade situation going on, from what my sources tell me, down there in that area which is contained. They explained to me that it's in a building, and what the police are doing right now as I speak, according to my police sources, they're sending a robot in to try to snuff this guy out and see if this person will come out. I'm also being told that the police are looking for a woman, a female, that they believe was driving a Chevy Malibu. Now, again, let me caution the viewers, this is all unconfirmed. This is a very fluid situation, but I want to give it to you as I'm getting it from very reliable sources. So as you can see, Shannon, there's a lot of things going on right now, but I think the most important thing is getting that suspect that they have in a barricaded situation, getting him out alive if they can, so we can find out when did he plan this, how did they plan it, and whether or not there are any other bombs placed strategically around the Baton Rouge area.
Mm-hmm. And certainly what the motivations are, because there's still so much we don't know yet about the motivations, who exactly was involved, how many people, of course.
That's right.
It takes time for those details to come in. You mentioned explosives. It is something that increasingly local law enforcement officers are having to be trained in. Local agencies are going to have to go to a different level. It's not just about guns and serving warrants. I mean, it's an expansive job. It is dangerous every single day. And now we have this added potential spark of explosives. Tell us a little bit about the kind of training and preparation that has to go into that, when now you've got to approach every scene as if that is another component to be dealt with.
Absolutely, and that's a very important component to be dealt with, because we oftentimes don't know whether or not a shooter in a situation like this one, or the guy in Dallas, we don't know if they've sabotaged the area. You know, a lot of times what they will do, they'll engage in a gun battle with police, and as we move forward towards them, then the bombs will go off. So we're training officers these days to be more cognizant, if you will, of that type of scenario. We have bomb squads in every police department across the country. We're utilizing better technology. We're utilizing robots to go into these areas. But again, it's a very dangerous and treacherous position that us as police officers are in. Think of it like this real quickly, Shannon. If armed police officers on the street aren't safe, then who is? And we know that we're targets, so if we're being shot at, imagine how our citizens feel. So we really need to try to find a way to bring all of this craziness to a head.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we heard in the days after the shooting deaths of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling, there were some cases around the country in which it appeared that people made 911 calls and brought officers or firefighters into situations in which they were then shot at or vulnerable. How in the world do law enforcement agencies prepare to handle that, knowing they need to respond to actual 911 calls with life and death situations, but also at the same time wondering if they're walking into an ambush? Well,
you know what? That's an excellent question. And we don't know if we're walking into an ambush. Shannon, you and I talked about that Ferguson situation where there were two individuals from the new Black Panther Party. They were trying to purchase weapons and bombs, and they were arrested by the FBI. You know what their plan was? Their plan was to do exactly what you just said. Have the police come to a certain area, and then they were going to ambush the cops. It almost appears as though that's what happened down here this morning. Now, we do know that the new Black Panther Party is there in Baton Rouge. We also know that they're armed. I'm not saying that they're responsible for this, but as law enforcement, we have to consider every possibility.
Yeah, and of course, again, we would note for people, as we have throughout the morning, we just don't know what the motivation was behind the shooting at this point. Is it unusual to you, Rod, that there would be such a high number of officers who have apparently been shot, 3 that are confirmed by the sheriff and local officials to be dead, at least 3 others wounded? I understand that the shooting may not have happened too far from police headquarters.
That's right.
Would there have been a reason that there would have been a number of officers together, or is it simply in the course of responding to this, that's maybe why you had the numbers in that one particular spot that you did?
No, I think it's going to be one of two things. I think the police were called to that particular area, and from the video, it looks like it could have been a gas station or something like that. So I think you had officers responding to that area for a particular call. They were called there for a reason or another. But the other problem you have with this situation is I also believe there were more than one shooter. There had to have been two shooters. Now, we can find out quickly the types of weapons and the types of rounds that was used at the hospital, when they start taking the bullet fragments from the victims. So that will give us additional information. But I think this was a planned ambush against this police department. And I think the officers were called there to this particular area. And then that's when they were attacked, Shannon.
All right, Rod Wheeler, experienced detective and officer, if you could stick around for us, thank you so much.
Sure.
I want to note that we're getting a statement from the governor of Louisiana saying this is an unspeakable and unjustified attack on all of us at a time when we need unity and healing. Rest assured, every resource available to the state of Louisiana will be used to ensure the perpetrators are swiftly brought to justice. For now, he wraps up saying, I'm asking all Louisianans to join Donna and me in praying for the officers who were involved and their families as the details continue to unfold.